Okay, we're back. I brought out a couple of 3D models here. You can see that this is half of a flying wing. It's got an elevon on here. And what I've done is I've created an elevon here that's very wide at the root end and narrow at the tip. Now this is greatly exaggerated. This is much wider at the root end than you would ever make one, much narrower at the tip than you'd ever make one. And I've done that so that we can get a clear view of the effect that's occurring here and understand the problem in 3Ds. Often helps to exaggerate a particular example in order to get to the core of the issue or phenomena that we're dealing with. And I have a second one here, and I didn't draw the line on here, but this one has a reverse taper on the elevon. There's no exact correct right way, wrong way, front way, reverse way taper on elevons or ailerons. This one I'll just call reverse because it's reverse from normal. This is very narrow at the root end of the elevon, very wide at the tip end of the elevon. And these two models actually have the same proportions here on the elevon, just reversed. So what I have here, let's go back to the original one. I have a couple of little sticks on here and I have little grooves for them to run in, and hopefully they'll stay in place so that we can see the sticks represent the effective chord line that I just talked about, how that chord line changes as you deflect the elevon. Now, nowhere else here in the wing is the chord of the airfoil being changed, only where the control surface is. So as we deflect, and I'm only going to deal with the up case here because that's the one of most interest. It's the case that causes the problems. So as we deflect the elevon up like this, you can see the action right here. This chord line here is changing its angle much faster than the chord line at the tip. I hope you can see that. I'm going to hold it up here, and maybe at this angle you can see it better. I'll try to get it on a good background on my shirt here as I look in the viewfinder. And let's get this guy back in the groove here where he's supposed to ride. Cheap models. Who built these props? Anyway, so as this goes up, if you look closely, you can see that the chord line at the root end of the elevon is moving its angle much faster than at the tip. In other words, what's happening here is the washout in this section of the wing is increasing. The washout is increasing faster than it's increasing at the tip out here. And at this point, you're probably beginning to see the issue, but I'm going to go over to the other model so you can see the reverse effect. Now, if we have the reverse where the elevon is wide at the tip and narrow at the root, and we deflect it up, and I hope you can see this, then the effective chord line at the tip is moving up much faster than it is at the root. This is just a basic 3D geometry problem. So what happens here, and I'll turn this the other way, if we're flying along and we deflect the elevon up and it has this reverse taper to it, we're actually increasing the twist of the wing as we deflect the elevon. In other words, we're increasing the washout of the entire wing in this particular case. And when we increase the washout of the wing, that bell-shaped lift distribution I talked about is getting much steeper. It becomes much steeper. It's same height here, but we're dropping it off faster out here because we're washing out the wing due to the shape of the elevon. Literally, the planform shape of this elevon is critical to the effective washout that's in the wing. Because it's wide here at the tip and narrow at the root, when we deflect the elevon up, we're actually increasing the washout in the wing, steepening that bell-shaped lift distribution, making the glider much more yaw stable. So as the elevons come up like this and we slow up, we're actually increasing our yaw stability because we're steepening that bell-shaped lift distribution. And in addition, we're twisting the wing to a higher washout angle and preventing tip stall. So as we come up to a higher angle of attack like this, we're washing out the wing more, washing out, washing out, washing out, and that forces the root of the wing to stall before the tip stalls. What we have here in this case is the reverse situation. And that's why when I explained to you on the models, when I went from the straight elevon to a tapered elevon, the spins came back. Because as the elevon came up, it's washing out this portion of the wing much more than it's washing out this portion of the wing, and it's strictly a geometry problem. And this exaggerated case shows that. So now this portion of the wing right here can go to a much higher angle of attack. Remember, as we reverse camber the airfoil, its stall angle of attack increases, the total lift it generates decreases, but the stall angle of attack increases. So now this portion of the wing can go to an even higher angle of attack before it stalls. Uh-oh, this guy out here is not washed out as much. So literally, this portion of the wing can force the whole wing up to an angle of attack that stalls the tip. And then you get the stall spin. You get the tip stall, you get a stall spin, and it's all because you gave this portion of the wing the power to drive the entire wing up to the point where the tip will stall. For small movements, the effect goes unnoticed. But if you're flying really slow in a thermal and you're going around like this, and all of a sudden you need to either roll into the turn more or you need to slow it up a little bit more, and you deflect this up, and this goes up to high angle of attack, and boom, you get tip stall, and zoom, down she goes, just like that. And that's what happens with flying wings that have this shape of elevon. Now, will this shape of elevon, well, I should pause for a moment. I give you a moment to go, aha, wow. Do you mean that the planform shape of the elevon's been driving this problem for decades? And yes, that's what I'm saying. The planform shape of the elevon. Why don't they teach that in school? I was explaining this phenomenon to a friend of mine, and he looked at me, fellow engineer, but a mechanical, and he looked at me and he says, you mean the shape of the control surfaces, the planform shape is arbitrary? And I go, yeah, pretty much. Arbitrary in terms of aerodynamics, that's what's taught in school. They usually end up a particular shape because that's where a spar is or some other factor. But control surfaces are sized for their moment arms and their areas, and how you get that area and moment arm kind of left to the designer. Flying wings, it makes a huge difference. This planform shape will make the difference between whether the glider stalls and spins or whether it's spin-proof. So we have to design our flying wings to include a third factor in designing the size and shape of the elevons, and that is the planform shape of the elevon relative to the taper of the wing and relative to the washout that's in the wing. So there you go. That's the whole story. You have the basic answer. We're going to have to move on and do a little math in a little bit so I can help people actually do the calculations to what shape to make this. But the other thing that I want to show you before we move on to that is, look what happens if we have a wing that's twisted like this already. So this chord line out here is at a negative angle of attack or neutral, and this guy's up at a positive angle of attack. And we have this, like this. Well, that's nice and stable, and as long as the elevon's not deflected, it'll go up like this, and it'll stall straight forward and go right back down and be fine. You won't get a tip stall. But with this shape of elevon, even though the wing is twisted, by doing this, when the elevon goes up like this and moves those chord lines, even though the wing's twisted, we've lost a bunch of washout that was in the wing. And that's bad. And that can put us into a stall spin. So the question becomes, how much is enough? Well, there's some math behind that. We're going to get onto that. But I want to show you a couple of special side cases that we'll look at, and you'll all of a sudden see those aircraft configurations in a different light and why they work and why they don't have problems. We're going to do another little flip around here, or maybe it'll be the next segment of the video. I don't know, but I'm going to shoot it now, and we're going to move on to that, and then we're going to come back and do math. Okay, I'm back with my handy-dandy whiteboard, and I've done a very poor job of drawing a flex wing hang glider on here. I'll try to do this a little bit better if I can just go straight out here, and this rounds in like that. You'll say, hey, Raul, I hear that flex wing hang gliders fly pretty nice, and they're pretty impervious to stall spin. Some will spin, but most won't. And here's why. I've showed you the phenomena of the reverse taper elevon and why that increases the washout in the wing. And flex wings have solved that problem and actually created elevons that have reverse taper without knowing it. As the hang gliders evolved from Regala wings, and I used to fly them back in the old bamboo and plastic days, very dangerous, and we moved on to the current modern crop of high performance flex wings, very safe to fly. Step by step, they walked through a situation that created this reverse effect elevon. And here's what happens. There was an error for a while. We had a keel pocket on here in the fabric, and the sail was allowed to shift side to side. And that would allow the sail on this side to billow more than on this side over here. So this side would billow up, the other side is held tight, and it would create a rolling moment. And we've gotten rid of the keel pockets, and we've gone with a floating crossbars. So the crossbar that's here is actually allowed to shift back and forth. That allows the leading edges to shift, and it likewise changes the billow that's in the sail that's here. But here's the interesting thing. Because we have a leading edge tube that runs out like this, fixed, and we have a crossbar this way, all of this fabric back here is fairly flexible. There are ribs or battens that are inserted in here into the sail. You'll see those, but those are free to move up and down. So what happens here is the essential flexing, if you could draw a hinge line here, the hinge line would be like this, right like this. And when flex wings flex, this is what part of the wing flexes. And look at that. There we go. We have a reverse taper elevon. Because the flex is going to occur relative to the leading edge and run in perpendicular to where the keel is. So it's this portion of the wing that is aft of that line that's acting as the elevon. It is wing warping at its best, is essentially what the Wright brothers did. And this is wing warping that creates an elevon that is narrow at the root and wide at the tip. So when regular flex wings fly and the pilot shifts his weight and the billow of the sail changes, it's actually increasing the washout in the wing. And that is what is helping prevent stalls and spins. And there's a good piece of proof about why this really works. When we first went from standard Regala wings to higher aspect ratio semi-Regala wings, and I'll put up a picture here of one from back in the 70s, about 1974 to 76, somewhere in there, it seemed to make sense. And the designers put a rigid tube out here like this. That's my tip airfoil. And the sail would come in straight like this from that tube. And they thought, I'm going to fix the stall spin problem because I'm going to lock that tube to the leading edge tube at a specific washout angle, 10 degrees, 12 degrees, whatever. So I got my washout fixed in the wing, problem solved. And I tell you, I've seen a lot of those designs fly in that era. I was out with my standard Regala wing. I see these new wings come out. They get a fixed tip on them like this, high aspect ratio, and they'd be floating along. We flew at Warren Dunes. They'd be floating along over the dunes and make a nice, gentle, flat turn. And man, the wing would just stall, and that would snap into a really flat spin, and they'd smack into that sand so fast. It was like, wow. Even though it's got fixed washout, they're spinning into the ground. And there were several designs that were notorious for that, really tight, flat spins. They came and went really fast. And what they had accidentally done is prevented this reverse taper elevon effect. They didn't know that. And eventually we went to free floating tips. This sail, there's, on most modern designs, there's a washout tube that's there, and that tube's up at an angle, but the sail's not attached to it here. It's allowed to float up and down. Or in some cases, the washout tube can move a little bit, but it doesn't go negative. I haven't seen the latest crop out in the recent years, and I don't know exactly how they're doing this out here now, but it's got to be something similar. But by allowing the sail to float out here, then they're allowing the sail to flex in such a way that they're creating this reverse taper elevon effect and preventing the stall spin that way. And if you fix the sail to a tube out here, it can't do that. You just get billow here, and you get this whole trailing edge going up and down, and you're basically simulating what we have on a rigid wing with a straight or regular taper elevon. And those designs had nasty spins on them. So by happenstance, as hang gliders evolved over the years, I don't think anybody's ever really analyzed it this way or looked at it this way. Maybe they have. I haven't ever seen it written up, but that's how it actually works, and how this phenomena actually presents itself on hang gliders, and why they're so nice to fly in their current configurations. Okay, let's take a look at some practical examples of this reverse taper elevon effect and how it works so nicely on flying wings. Here's an example of a radio control seagull model, and it's attempting to emulate what Mother Nature has already done on seagulls. It's creating a situation such that when the wingtip is deflected, a reverse taper, a triangular shaped elevon, is created, and that's because the D-tube ends short of the wingtip and the root end is fixed on a rib. This is also analogous to how the hang gliders are working. That picture that I just drew with the extra flexible tip out there that gets deflected up and down and allows the wing to warp in such a way that it prevents tip stalling. So let's take a look at a little video of that wingtip actually being actuated, and you'll see very clearly how it forms this reverse taper elevon. Okay, here we have a little bit of video of the wingtips moving up and down. I've slowed this video up so we have a chance to take a look at the actual motion. There's two arms that come back from the servo and push on a flexible portion of the foam wing. Zooming in here to get a close look at them. Those two little arms move up and down. So essentially the wingtips are going from a 0 setting to up. They have ultimate differential. They go up only, no down. Here we see both wingtips go up and down together for elevator effect, and then we'll see a portion here where they're working in differentially for aileron effect. And you can begin to see that triangular shape that forms, that there's no elevon function at the root end and lots out at the tip, ensuring that the tips never stall no matter how the controls are deflected or the vehicle is maneuvered. And then we'll get one view here from the rear, and you can really see how that warping function occurs, and you're deflecting a large chunk of tip and very little at the root end, making a reverse taper in the elevon. Here we're looking at the Patron 3 flying wing, which is very close to a Hurton configuration, and it can very clearly see the elevons out at the tips, and they have a reverse taper to them. They have a large amount of chord at the tip and a smaller amount at the root. And I know that Al Bowers and some other folks did a parametric study of a variety of elevon shapes, and this is the one that he liked best. He felt that this flew the best, although I haven't seen any mathematical description or statements as to what constituted flying best. Was it that it prevented spins, or that it just maneuvered better? I don't know. The only thing that I've read is that it flew better like this. I saw another one of these configurations done where the hinge line was actually perpendicular to the incoming flow, and the elevon actually went to a point at the root and was the entire tip out at the other end of the elevon. And the people that fly these say they fly better. We like it better. But I don't think anybody's shown the math or written up as to why it actually works. And that's what I'm going to show you here in a little bit. But I want to give you one more example of a serendipitous selection of elevon shape. Here we have the Millennium foot-launched sailplane, or hang glider if you prefer. It's class 2. It's a rigid wing. And this was a follow-on to the Swift, meant to be more portable, lighter weight, easier to launch, easier to take care of, more durable, less susceptible to field damage. And you will clearly see on this that it has elevons with a reverse taper to them. They are narrower at the root and wider at the tip. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, those guys are pretty smart. I know Steve Morris was involved in doing the aerodynamics on this hang glider, and he really knows his stuff. I believe he's a PhD aero engineer, and I thought maybe he cracked the code. Maybe somebody got to this before I did. So I contacted him and I asked him why the elevons had this reverse taper. And I discovered he did it for a variety of other reasons. There were some structural considerations, transportation, and he wanted to keep the wing as close to a straight taper as possible, the same root chord as the tip chord, and yet work the elevon in there such that it's attached to the trailing edge. And he also wanted to avoid the situation of having a discontinuity point on the elevon, which would cause an increase in induced drag. So this is the elevon shape that he came up with. Serendipitously, it turns out to be a reverse taper. And I'm going to show you the math in a moment as to why this works out so well on flying wings. And I've heard people say that if the Swift is not flown exactly correctly, it will break into a spin. I've seen some videos of those spins. And I reached out and I found out from some Millennium pilots that the Millennium is resistant to spins. It will spin if it's provoked or forced into it, but nominally it will not spin. And that is different than the Swift. The Swift has different shaped elevons, and if you're not careful, it will spin. So that's another indicator that the shape of the elevon is critical. The planform shape of the elevon is critical to ensuring that a wing is spin-proof. And remember, it's a combination of the planform shape of the elevon, the twist in the wing, and the taper that's in the wing. So here we've seen several examples of where this reverse taper is being used successfully. So I think we have enough data, enough proof that this concept is a solid concept, and what we need now is a way to mathematically calculate what the correct shape of an elevon should be for a given flying wing to ensure that we don't have spins, and that's where we're going to go in the next episode. So hang in there with me, come on back for the next episode, and see the down and dirty math that makes this work. See you then. Fly safe. Bye for now.